Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Hundreds of nurses across the province held an information picket today that includes one at a long-term care home in Windsor. Plus, the community says goodbye to a long-time disability advocate who, through his actions, proved anything is possible. And we give you a sneak peek at some of St. Clair College students' newest fashion designs ahead of the program's 10-year anniversary. Local nurses held an information picket today, speaking out against for-profit long-term care homes. It's part of an Ontario Nurses Association movement happening across the province. The CBC's Dale Molnar has more.
Resident care over profit! Resident care over profit!
Long-term care nurses are calling for better funding and higher wages for nurses. They say there is a crisis in long-term care due to a shortage of nursing staff.
The lack of staffing because of poor wages, because we're not comparable to hospital. The nurses are going otherwhere. Like they're going to hospitals, they're going to the States. They're not staying in long-term care.
They say patient care is suffering.
So if you have a resident presenting with an acute condition, and you're taking care of 5 or 6 other sick residents at the same time, there's only one nurse to go and assess those residents. That nurse might be busy with another resident for an hour, 45 minutes, getting them transferred to hospital.
The picket in Windsor took place at Extendicare Southwood Lakes.
Extendicare has been reported to make $1.3 billion in revenues last year alone on the backs of the residents and the staff in these for-profit homes. We need to focus on the residents.
In a statement from an Extendicare spokesperson, the company says, "At all of our long-term care homes, we deeply value our nursing team members' dedication to quality care for our residents and their families. We respect the union's right to organize and demonstrate, and as a regular practice, we maintain ongoing dialogue with our union partners on any issues of concern to their members." But the Windsor Health Coalition says the for-profit system is costlier, and now the province is forcing hospital patients to go into long-term care homes that may not be their first choice or face a fine. Sometimes the long-term care homes patients are told to go to can be a bit far from home.
When you're pushing them 50, 100 kilometers away, then even that small measure is removed, and that's putting additional pressure on the nurses.
He says patients aren't getting the 4 hours of hands-on care that's meant to be the provincial standard.
We see everything from half hour to 45 minutes up to about 2 hours of hands-on care.
In an emailed statement, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Long-Term Care says the Ministry of Long-Term Care is responsible for the overall funding of the long-term care sector, including municipal and not-for-profit homes, which has seen a historic investment of $4.9 billion to support our government's commitment to providing the care people deserve and expect. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
You may not have known his name, but you most likely saw him scooting around Windsor. Community members are grieving the loss of John Paul Marintet, also known as JP. He was a founding member of a supportive housing facility for adults living with physical disabilities, and he dedicated his life to education and volunteering. JP lived with cerebral palsy, and as friends say, that never stopped him.
So anybody who lives in the East End would have noticed JP because he was cruising all around the streets of the East End of Windsor.
That's because he was in a scooter.
He was in a scooter. Yeah, it was his basically his Mercedes of the streets, and he just took that independence and drove everywhere. One time, JP actually needed some new furniture, and he was furniture shopping, and somebody told him that the best furniture was in Essex. So he drove all the way from Windsor East End all the way to Essex on his scooter and back successfully. He was inspiration to everybody that has a disability of any sort, because here's a guy that was told that he wouldn't be able to do certain things, and he never let that stop him. He was independent, he was mobile, he knew how to get what he wanted and how to help others.
The drawbacks that life threw at him, he was more positive than anybody. I think he was more, he had a better attitude than me most of the time, I think, too, in spite of it. Just JP was JP. People knew him at the church, knew him at, around the town, knew him at Walmart, especially at the lottery counter. I'd run into him quite often, getting us lottery tickets.
So many good memories that we can laugh and we can smile and we can think about JP and all those positive lights and think about how independent and how much he gave to our community, and teaching people about disabilities, that he's not scary. Children would go for rides on his lap, things like that, and he would just have such a good time with young people and older people and everywhere in between. But it is a sad day.
All Windsor Public Library branches may open on Sundays, but as talks continue, the union says it's worried that will mean reduced hours on other days.
We have some concerns that the greatest impacts will be felt in the lowest income neighborhoods where the needs are high.
Right now, there are 3 Windsor libraries open on Sundays. That potential change put forward in the bargaining process, which is still ongoing, but the union says the city doesn't want to pay for additional hours. Library Board Chair Mark McKenzie says that's not true and says he wants Sunday service without affecting other days. Asked to respond to McKenzie's statement, the union said the board chair isn't at the bargaining table. QP Local 2067 has been bargaining for months after the contract expired in December. Last month, the workers voted 96% in favor of a strike vote. The union says that's not something they'd like to do. The city of Detroit says it's getting ready for the biggest party it's ever hosted. The 2024 NFL Draft will be taking place in the Motor City from April 25th to the 27th. Transit Windsor has expanded its tunnel bus service for the event. Buses will run longer hours and the frequency of them will also increase. The city of Detroit says it's been working behind the scenes for the last year preparing for the big event. Downtown Detroit road closures have already began and more will be added each week. All 32 NFL teams will be announcing their picks live and in person. A Chatham emergency room doctor was on Parliament Hill this week advocating for better patient care, not just from a professional standpoint, but personal as well. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer several years ago, and he's calling on the federal government to make healthcare improvements.
I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've done that now for over 15 years. I've worked with many patients and their families who have cancer. And unfortunately, I've had to share that news with people on many occasions. I knew the medicine of cancer, but until I was told myself that I had cancer, that put things in a whole new perspective. The emotional toll that brought on both myself, family, and friends. The challenge of navigating a system that I knew how to navigate.
It's a stressful time of the year for University of Windsor students as they go through exams and final projects. The university's Aboriginal Education Center is trying to help, handing out wellness packages to the students. Kat Pasquatch is with the center and spoke with Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge.
The first thing that I wanted to make accessible to our students was traditional medicines. So I have braids of sweetgrass. So they're just long braids of sweetgrass that we would normally burn, sort of like an incense if people aren't familiar with the practice of smudging. But it lets off a really light floral fragrance. And smudging is a practice of cleansing. We use it to pray. It's grounding. And it's one of the medicines that are most locally available to this region.
St. Clair College's fashion program is celebrating its 10th year. On April 20th, students will hold the 10th annual fashion show. We swung by to catch an early glimpse of their creations before being judged by some fashion industry insiders.
I'm calling this the shell dress. My collection is inspired by the Canadian East Coast, specifically my trip to Newfoundland last year. And I really wanted to play around with traditional needlecraft, so like quilting, patchwork, and it's really inspired by like the natural beauty of the East Coast. So these are actually like freshwater mussels. So I really loved the seafood out there too, but I actually made this out of upcycled denim pants. So all of these different shell colors were pants that I had patchworked together. Even the base was made of denim shell from those pants. And the lining is actually a silk curtain I found at Goodwill.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's one of the prizes that they're giving out is
There's a new sustainability award, I believe, through Telio. So I was really gunning for that one with this collection. I also just naturally gravitate towards reusing objects and using sustainable materials, but they're fun to work with too.
This have a platters on that, and there is a torso inside, and this is a whole, like the ground length dress. This is the wine shoulders.
It looks really chic.
Thank you.
Are you nervous about the competition, the runway show?
Yes, because this is our first time we are presenting something, so it's a kind of bit nervousness.
Why did you decide to go into fashion?
Because I belongs to a small village from India, and my home's like my mother do stitching, and I saw how she work hard, and I get inspiration for her to do something like in this field. So I came here to do a fashion.
This shirt I got from a thrift store. I always had this idea. It's one of the reasons why I came into this program, to learn how to upcycle band t-shirts and create things with band t-shirts. But if I win it, that'd be great. If I don't, then I hope anyone else is lucky to get it.
Colette, there better still be lots of sun in that weekend forecast after the last 2 days we've just had.
Yes, I mean, it's been a lot to endure, hasn't it?
It has. And another reason I want sun for tomorrow is because I'm coaching 5-year-old soccer, and I would like some good weather for tomorrow, our first game.
Of course you are. I love it. Yes. And you know what? I think the sun isn't going to be the factor so much as the winds are still going to be kind of breezy. But when they're 5-year-old, they're like just like bees buzzing around the ball. Everybody goes towards it. So maybe it's not going to go too far, right? Current temperatures, I'm just showing you this and starting with this. Even the winds and rain, I know, are a big part of what's going on right now, but just kind of the cold core where the center of this low is. And that's where we're going to find there are areas where it gets into some mixing or even some snow. Don't worry, not in southwestern Ontario, but it is still happening at this time of year as that low is pulling that wraparound, and it's pulling some of that cold air in and mixing now. Still some thunderstorm activity back to the west in here. And look at that wrap around, all that moisture wrapping around, still dealing with some wet conditions. Special weather statement for all of our areas here in this sort of bluish green color. And then the wind warning, that is an area where we're looking at winds gusting to around 90 kilometers an hour or stronger. Elsewhere, they've been strong enough. Windsor, we've had a gust over 70 kilometers an hour at 72, and that's the reason for the special weather statement. And the ground is very soggy too, so you can get a situation where the tree roots are really unstable, and then the winds will pull trees down, and then that can pull power lines down. So something to be mindful of here as we look ahead. The sustained winds, I mentioned we had one over 72, one gust over 72. There have been some strong high 60s in London, and those are going to continue on this evening. These are the forecasts. Tonight, you can see why Goderich is actually into a wind warning. And then even tomorrow morning, whether it's out on the field playing soccer, there's still going to be some strong or at least breezy conditions. Then it backs off tomorrow afternoon. Sunday morning, a little pop-up again of the winds coming back. So let's get rid of this. Let's get some clearing tonight. Set us up. We'll see that, you know, yellow orb in the sky once again and have some nice sunshine. I think Sunday's actually looking pretty good too. There's a system that's going to come through, and on the tail end of it, the timing could be that actually we get some thunderstorms. You see almost nothing there. This model doesn't want to pop those up. It keeps it to the southeast of us before we see that development, but there's a chance later in the day on Sunday for a few thunderstorms picking up. Not much moisture left, thank goodness, with what we are still contending with. 5 for that overnight low, and then 15 tomorrow with the sun. And then you got to see this, the temperature profile and what's going to be happening once we get to Sunday and beyond and get away from the winds and the rain.
Colin, I've never played soccer with rubber boots on, but I'm thinking tomorrow might be the day. If you've got little ones, might trade in the cleats.
Yeah, the field might be a little soggy, too, from the last few days. Yeah.
I think it will be. Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Coming up, we have the details on the federal government's plans for housing. Stay tuned. The federal government announced new parts of its housing plan today, focusing on getting rental homes built. Justin Trudeau also threw down the gauntlet for provinces and municipalities, saying they need to do their part. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
We are releasing the most comprehensive and ambitious housing plan ever seen.
Federal governments have seldom built housing strategies in this country. This is Justin Trudeau's second shot at it. Years ago, he focused on affordable housing. Now, with skyrocketing monthly mortgage and rent payments, Ottawa has rental housing in its crosshairs.
We're going to do that by reducing the cost of home building, by putting tax incentives on the table for builders, low-cost financing. We're also going to be launching new measures that help unlock federal lands.
The government's launching $15 billion in more loans, the goal to spur the construction of at least 30,000 new rental units over the next year. And some of that will be on public lands, the government opening up its own portfolio for either sale or lease.
We're seeing language and a scale of an initiative that I've never seen before.
The financing amounts and opening up of more land will start putting a dent in the housing gap, this developer says, and more rental units will improve the overall market.
The risk, of course, is that rental housing is so incredibly expensive that there's nothing left at the end of the month to start saving for a down payment. So having a little bit of a surplus or oversupply of rental housing would be really good.
But as Ottawa muscles in on turf it does not usually touch, some are crying foul.
They've swooped in and they've got a special deal with Edmonton, a special deal with Calgary. They've handpicked 6 different municipalities to work directly with and left over 340 other municipalities out in the cold. We just don't think that's fair.
Trudeau was hammered months ago for saying housing is not a primarily federal responsibility. He's now pushing back.
Provinces should be careful what they wish for. They want the federal government to fix this housing crisis? We are. We will. We are there to work hand in hand in full respect with those provinces who want to solve the problem and ask those provinces that don't want to solve the problem to just get out of the way.
Ultimately, though, it's consistent messaging on cost of living issues from the federal Conservatives that's pushed the government to act on housing policies. The Liberals' electoral fortunes have yet to improve in opinion polls. The budget next week might be their biggest test yet. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
It was a story that became a lightning rod for the anger and anxiety surrounding inflation. Grocery giant Loblaws reducing its discount on food nearing expiration. The decision was reversed, but now a Loblaw subsidy is getting attention. The CBC's Sophia Harris reports.
Kim Seaver went to his local superstore to check out the deals after owner Loblaw announced it would reinstate 50% discounts on food nearing its best before date. But all perishables here still have 30% off stickers.
I was disappointed.
Why do you think it should be 50% across the board at Loblaw stores?
Well, clearly they can afford it if some stores are offering it.
Back in January, Loblaw lowered its 50% discounts to 30% for perishable food. That angered customers amidst rising prices. So Loblaw backtracked, saying it would bring back the 50% markdowns where they existed before. And in an email to CBC News, the grocer confirms all of the discounts went back to what they were previously, which range between 30% and 50% off in respective stores. When Loblaw announced the initial change, real Canadian superstores were already only offering 30% discounts. So Loblaw says that discount stays put.
I'm at Superstore.
Warren Chapman says his neighborhood superstore previously offered a 50% discount, but changed it to 30% around 5 years ago. He believes Loblaw should reverse that decision too.
Just don't see how they could justify treating their customers at Superstore different than they're treating their customers at their other stores.
Consumers talk to each other, and you can quickly be pointed at as an unfair grocer following unfair practices. And to me, that criticism is warranted.
This professor says Loblaw should offer half-off deals at all its standard stores or risk more backlash.
As a national player, you have to be extremely careful.
Give us the 50% off. We appreciate it.
Chapman and other superstore shoppers hope Loblaw will once again change its discount policy. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Protection strategies were unveiled this week by Instagram. We give you all the details on that coming up. Social media has introduced many new words. One of the uglier ones is sextortion, luring victims to transmit intimate photos and then using those photos for blackmail. Protection strategies were unveiled this week by Instagram, but many internet watchers are unimpressed. The CBC's Anis Hadari reports.
Young people on Instagram will face new barriers if they send or receive nude photos. The idea is that temporarily blurring images can prevent abuse and blackmail. But child advocates say Instagram's parent company Meta isn't doing enough.
It really seems like a Band-Aid approach, and the responsibility still rests with kids to keep themselves safe, and there's just so much more these platforms can be doing.
If the app automatically detects a nude, it will prompt users to tap an extra button to see or send it. If they do, the image goes through. In a statement, Meta said nudity protection will be turned on by default for teens under 18 globally and will show a notification to adults encouraging them to turn it on. Experts point out users can just go elsewhere.
They're going to go to other platforms like Snapchat and Wiz that don't have these kind of current safeguards or regulations, and they're going to start using those platforms.
And there's concerns about how automated detection would work because AI can make mistakes.
Including through sort of a discriminatory overreach into some types of conversation and not others, or sort of a discriminatory approach to content moderation and what images come down or what conversations come down and are flagged and which ones are not.
It's not clear when these features will take effect. Meta has said it's testing them, but researchers point out there's no accountability.
There's no need right now for them to share the data. How effective are these measures? They will 100% be collecting that data, but they don't have to share it with anybody.
One thing isn't blurry. Anyone of any age isn't blocked from sending nudes on Instagram because the app doesn't require proof to say you're old enough. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
There's growing interest in the rare minerals and resources that can be found in asteroids and moons. Future exploring in low gravity will have its challenges, but Swiss researchers say the solution is hopping.
The idea is that locomotion on low gravity bodies like asteroids or moons is quite challenging, right? Especially for classic wheeled systems.
The space hopper is designed to overcome low gravity by harnessing it as a method of moving around. The three-legged robot can control its flight attitude, giving it controlled locomotion in the tricky environment. Space hopper was successfully tested in zero gravity conditions during a parabolic flight in a reduced gravity aircraft, also known as the Vomit Comet. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here next week.